because everybody thought the Green Party, well, everybody in Burlington, or a lot of people in Burlington, we found, thought that Steve Eckberg was the Green Party of Vermont per se, that he represented it, and he didn't really. He is a bit of a loose cannon and not a villain. He's not a villain, but it created a lot of bad PR. He did.
He's not willing to go along with the idea of independence, so, and but the Green Party in southern Vermont does support independence, or
well,
did.
It did. There is no organized Green Party right now. There are a lot of Greens in Vermont, and there were before there was a Green Party in Vermont. There can be a Green Party again, but it will be up to people to organize it in just 10 towns. That's all that's needed, and then run candidates for the Green Party on the ballot in Vermont. It's totally possible to do. I'm not doing that anymore because, as mentioned at the beginning, I saw with the election of Barack Obama, I saw all opposition to any of the evils that Bush created over. There is no opposition to those evils because everyone who voted for Obama trusts Obama. Even though it should be clear as a bell, I mean, squeegee your third eye somehow and see that Obama is just continuing Bush. That's all he's doing. And in fact, in ways that it just boggle the mind. The faith-based initiative that Bush came up with, tax money going to specifically religious institutions which proselytize with tax money. Obama's continuing that and expanded it. He didn't need to do that, but he did it. He's doing it. So long as there's faith in him, there is no forward progress possible. The only way there could be any forward progress possible is to understand that Obama is part of the Democratic lie. It is not an opposition party. It is an enabler and a facilitator of the Republican agenda. And that includes war overseas, depression at home, squeeze the middle class into poverty. They're succeeding. They're doing it. They're working their magic. It's been a long time coming, and they're getting there. And Obama is facilitating it. One thing he's doing that people don't know is, again, a continuation, but an expansion under Obama, a continuation of Bush, and that is NATO bases are encircling Russia. They are threatening Russia. We have over 800 bases. I read the other day somebody said 1,000. I don't know that it's 1,000, but we have 800 bases around the world in over 100 different countries. Now, why are we having military bases in all those countries? To stop terrorists? Well, that's why I say this government is the terrorists. They're not stopping anything. They're militaristic. There's been a long-standing wet dream of the Pentagon under John F. Kennedy. They tried to promote a 9/11 of its time, which is called Operations Northwood. He spiked it. He stopped it, which would involve hijacking of planes, crashing into buildings, killing American citizens, so it could all be blamed on Cuba, so we'd attack Cuba in 1962. Well, he spiked it. Unfortunately, though, the only people who knew he did this were the Pentagon, and they had a hand in his murder. Many entities did in 1963 of the government, including Lyndon Johnson, many agencies who were involved, and I know this from their actions of what they did and did not do that day and subsequently. And I'd love to spend an hour on that, but
well, my view on that is that Lyndon Johnson made a deal with the mafia leader, I forget his name, to knock off Kennedy.
Maybe.
Whatever, but to knock off Kennedy. And then the mafia, Bobby Kennedy had, as Attorney General, had been prosecuting the mafia. So,
and before, when he was in the Senate, Bobby Kennedy was a Senate investigator in the 50s attacking the mafia.
Also when his brother became president. So so to pay back the mafia leader for knocking off Kennedy and making Lyndon Johnson president, Lyndon Johnson terminated the investigation of the mafia. So it was a nice little cozy deal to make Johnson president and get rid of Kennedy.
But the first thing he did, while the generals were in the autopsy room directing the autopsy, don't write that down. Don't write down where that wound is. We have eyewitnesses who said so. Write this down instead. They oversaw the autopsy, which is a pack of lies, and they were in on it. The FBI was in on it. The Secret Service was definitely in it. We have film of people who should have been riding along the Kennedy limousine who were told at the airport as they were getting on, they were waved off by a superior, get off, get off. And they jumped off the back of the car and they went like this. What are you telling us this for? It's our job to be there on the outskirt of the car to protect the president.
If they'd been riding on the car, they would have been hit by the bullet instead of Kennedy.
Yeah, possibly. Or might have even stopped it or protected him or something. But a lot of people were thrown out of their normal routines that day in many levels of government agencies. And so it was not just the mafia. It was a widespread group of people. And Bobby Kennedy, I think, did not pursue it, even though he launched his own internal investigation very quietly. The first call he made was to a reporter, Haynes Johnson, after he learned his brother had been killed. He called up some people in the CIA and said, "You people killed my brother." And that he disavowed that, but Haynes Johnson tells the story. Haynes Johnson was a respected Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter who didn't make things up. And there were a lot of instances beyond that, people who knew Bobby Kennedy, who were part of a little group who kept investigating his brother's murder up until when Bobby Kennedy was killed. And Bobby Kennedy even said right before he was killed too, Bobby Kennedy was very, very naive and foolish that they wouldn't kill him. It wouldn't let him get close to the White House to do this. He said, we're going to launch our own investigation when I'm president. Wasn't going to happen. I also think Lyndon Johnson killed Martin Luther King because King turned against the Vietnam War and 1 month later was killed. Or excuse me, 1 year to the day later was killed. And that was a week after Johnson announced he wasn't running for president. It's not just a series of coincidences. I don't think there are many other factors involved. However, having said that, it wasn't just, it was a number of people. From that point on, to be president and stay alive, you had to do what the Pentagon told you, which is exactly what Obama's doing. There's no difference. It's never ended. Kennedy assassination is still going on. Now, other people are being killed because of it. Bobby Kennedy blew it. He should have announced what he thought before he died. He never did. And because he didn't, everyone was expecting, well, if he's not saying anything, he must think it was Oswald.
Teddy Kennedy could have said something.
I don't know that Ted Kennedy ever had an inkling. I don't know. Maybe he did. I don't know of what was going on. Ted Kennedy befriended Arlen Specter, who came up with the single bullet theory, which is the stupidest lie of the entire Kennedy assassination, that a bullet would go through one man and then hover in space and then change direction and go down and then go up and then remain intact. And there is more bits of the bullet in the two people it went through than were left on the bullet that they found on a stretcher. Somebody said they found it on a stretcher. So Arlen Specter came up with that cock and bull story, and he was a buddy of Ted Kennedy. So I don't know where the heads were of these Kennedys, but they let their brother down, and they let the country down. The country has never been the same. Kennedy was going to change a lot of things, and they killed it. They killed everything he was going to change. He got some of it done in his brief time, but very little. Test ban treaty, Pentagon didn't want it. He was disengaging from Vietnam. He had a presidential order that exists. I've read it. It exists for anybody to look at on the internet. That the day after the assassination, Lyndon Johnson overturned it, which said that winter, 1,000 of the American advisors are going to be withdrawn from Vietnam in lieu of a complete disengagement from Vietnam a year and a half later. That was the plan. It was never allowed to follow by Lyndon Johnson. who had to go along with the madmen in the Pentagon. And they wanted their war, and they got it, Vietnam. You know, these wars are designed to never end, because so long as they continue, people make money off them. They're not designed to be won. They're designed to never end. They didn't even want to lose them. They don't want to lose them. They resisted losing Vietnam. But they, like Iraq, like Afghanistan, they're never going to end.
Would you believe that almost 100 years ago today, we fought and won a war to end all wars?
Yeah, the romantic thinking, musings of the early 20th century that a war could end all wars.
That was the story in the First World War. We were fighting to end all wars.
The absolute dumbest war of all time.
And we won the war.
World War I. Yeah, but it can actually happen.